Welcome to Emotional Support Water Bottle with Hannah and Ailish. I'm Hannah.
And I'm Ailish. I meant to fix my hair before this, and I literally forgot. But it doesn't matter. Yeah, it's fine. Okay, so we are here today to discuss, we're bringing back our book club, guys. I know so many of you have been asking, when are you bringing back the monthly book club? And we're finally doing it. So we read Hits, Flops, and Other Illusions by Ed Zwick.
Yes. Overall, I liked the book a lot. It had a lot of juicy stuff in there.
I know.
And I liked because it's kind of like spaced out, or like the story's told through like by his big project. So it's like movie by movie kind of, but then all the stuff in between. So that was kind of like a fun.
Yeah, so it did go in chronological, which I like.
Me too.
Had you ever heard of him before we?
No.
Me either.
I know, and I'm like, wait, I've seen this movie. Wait,
I know.
It was kind of like mystery as I was going through it. I'm like, oh, Love and Other Drugs. I saw that.
I loved that one.
I know this movie.
I know. There were some I was totally shocked.
I know. I guess like for me, I've never really cared a ton about a ton of directors.
Me
and
either.
Stuff.
I know.
Unfortunately,
I'm sorry.
I'm more into the pop culture-y part of it.
I know. But now that we've read this, we see how much. I mean, you know how much work. It's okay. You know how much work they put into it. But then hearing this, you're like, oh, I wish I did pay more attention.
I know. Like, I was thinking that too. Even when I've been listening to like the Horror Virgin podcast, just some of the stuff, like the fun facts, they'll do like fun facts and stuff. I'm like, gosh, there's so much more that I like don't think about because I only care about the actors.
I know.
And I know I feel bad.
Me too. And I mean, we know like Steven Spielberg,
like
Quentin Tarantino. Yeah, like we know
Eli
the
Roth.
big names, but
yeah, I guess I know more horror directors than I do like the big movies that are happening at the Oscars every year.
I know. Well, and I mean, to our defense, his big movies were a little while ago,
right, and like a bit before our time.
Yeah, and they would be ones that like we've seen later, but weren't even maybe like alive or were very young when they first came out. So, you know, maybe if we were like in our 20s in the 90s, we would have really known him. But so, and the one thing that he said, which is another through line for so many of the books that we've listened to so far, is that he kept all these notebooks and like journals all through the years. And I mean, it was just like with Matthew McConaughey too. Like, you can now create such a wonderful book, not even just for the masses, but like for yourself and for your family to look back and read and remember you by. I mean, that is so beautiful.
I know, and it is weird, like, because like if you're a regular old person, you're not doing that as much, but honestly we should be.
I know, because
it helps you remember things.
It does, because I remember when I used to be better at journaling, like one of the reasons why I kind of stopped was because I was just not inspired to write about what I'm doing in my day. I mean, I'm not doing super interesting things that I think are interesting right now. Maybe I would look back.
But then to look back like, oh, remember that time from when I was 28 through 30 and this is what I spent my days doing.
I know.
And that would still be cool to look back on. But
I know, but I mean, I guess we could start now, but we're missing quite a few years.
Just on that point too, it's nice to have, because a lot of these like memoirs come in from like a very reflective place, and then they'll be like, well, this is probably what I was feeling then. And it's like, okay, well, that, because you're in therapy, you can say that and stuff, but we aren't getting like, I don't know. It's just when you can actually have those memories from that time of how you were feeling, I just feel like it's like kind of tells a better story.
Yeah. And I think with him specifically, this wasn't just about his personal life or traumas, and he wasn't using this book as like part of therapy like some other authors have that we've read. And
Selma Blair.
Yeah. And Minka Kelly. But
Demi Moore.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But like that just makes for a more interesting read, because he's saying like, I was so upset about this at the time. Like this, even reading that like brought back the feeling that I felt.
And I think too, like, I guess I'm personally getting a little tired of like the just trauma dumping with no resolution.
Yeah.
So this book was a lot more refreshing because it wasn't just about like, oh, I had a horrible childhood. And
I know. And it was kind of a random pick because basically we both could get it and then read it at the same time. But I did overall like really like it. It was different from what we typically would choose, but it gave a lot of insider information to the industry, which I loved.
I know.
And he wasn't afraid to name drop. And
no,
he said it at the very beginning. He's like, I'm going to be dropping names.
And he really didn't say anything, in my opinion, that horrible.
Yeah,
I mean, there's just like a couple things where you're like, yeah. But then some of it was kind of like, I don't want to say common knowledge, but it's like, oh, you mean that person was super difficult? Well, we've heard some rumblings about that.
Yeah.
He also, another thing that he had in this book too was he gave like tips to like people who want to do film.
Yeah. Which for me, listening to that, I didn't always love it. But I think if I would have read it, I would have liked it more.
I know, because it kind of was like, I don't know. It was kind of like the way he was delivering it a little bit. Like when reading it, it's like, well, that worked for you. I guess I kind of got like, well, that worked for you. It's not going to work for everybody type of attitude.
Yeah, I know. Or it was just, I was so into the story kind of that we got for like the chapter. And I thought that each of those were kind of going to be, I don't know, like maybe tips or bullet points from the chapter before, but they weren't.
It was just kind of like this random aside. Like it was almost like, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's like that gimmicky. Like this book wasn't a gimmicky self-help book, but those like listicles
kind of were. It was like in like some teen magazine where it would be like 10 ways to get a boyfriend fast.
And it would like just come out of nowhere. I'm like, is this Leah Michelle's book right now?
I mean, they weren't like that cheesy, but they were just kind of like, huh?
I know, and they weren't that long either. But it was just kind of like a random thing in there that would kind of like take me out.
Yeah, I ended up skipping them towards the end because I was running.
This is nice.
I was running out of time.
I know. I think that's kind of like it was like a whole day or like 2 days just trying to get it done. But I still liked it.
Yeah, I did too. Of course, I waited until the last minute. I always do.
I know. I've been having problems with like every book that I've been taking out lately. It's
I know,
like 2 days left. I'm
and you get the notification.
I'm like
how fast can I put the speed up until I can't understand them anymore?
But anyway, that's a different thing.
Okay, so kind of from the top, he talks about his friendship. He name drops big time. He drops Woody Allen. And he says that he developed this friendship with him when he was an assistant on one of his films in Paris for, I think I put For Love and Death, which must have been a movie. I've never seen that, but it must be a Woody Allen film. So he like that kind of was his start, and like really obviously like being an assistant on a Woody Allen film, like that's gonna be helpful for you. And I don't know, just some of his early stuff.
I do think it's interesting. Like I feel like we kind of hear this a lot, and I don't know if like the actors or like the famous people and stuff are trying to like play it cool, but it does always feel like they just fall into place.
Oh, I know.
It's like, well, I was running through the hallway and this big wig saw me and like demanded I audition.
And pulled me into their office. Yeah, it's like, okay. I mean, he did talk a little bit about like his schooling and stuff, but then it just seemed like oh, now I'm in Paris at this
Yeah, it's like,
movie
wait, what?
set, and it's with Woody Allen. And even back in that time, Woody Allen was a big deal. It's not
I
like he
know.
wasn't famous yet. He definitely was.
I know. And then it just is like, and I don't know if they like downplay too, like, I actually had this connection from something
Yeah, they don't want to
else, but
seem
they
like
don't
a
wanna
nepo or
Yeah.
something. Yeah. He talked about meeting his friend Marshall in school and how they are still friends now and end up working together on quite a few projects. And I think the first thing was that, was it that 30 something? Or was
Oh,
that was the show that they had, the network like sitcom basically.
Yeah, that actually sounded really
I
kind
know,
of
and I'd never
fun.
heard
I'd
of
never heard
it.
of it either.
It said like that it was never a toxic environment, which I thought was so interesting.
I know.
And it was kind of, I wish I wrote down the dates that it was on, but if you're looking it up, we can kind of see.
I was sorry. Okay, first episode date was September 29th, 1987.
Okay, so that was pre-Friends. I remember him saying that. But it almost
but it sounds
seemed
like it was Friends.
Yeah,
like,
I know. It was just not at the right time or not.
And they had like the kid thing.
like so cute. And with families instead of just, you know,
group of
people
singles.
living in New York. Yeah. But I liked, this was kind of something that he talked about throughout the book too, was this show and how they tackled kind of heavy topics that weren't talked about on TV before, and how like, what was it that they had like another husband and wife? Was it Marshall and his?
Yeah, it was. They were writing it, and then they were like, and all the wives were writing too, and then it was like they were putting their real life into the characters.
And then some were also like acting, and then like the one wife was married to somebody else on set, and like that was kind of awkward because you're writing like for my wife to be with another man. Yeah. And then if they were having real conflict, it was kind of brought into the script.
Which is kind of fun, I think. That's why if I would have been able to like actually take my time with this book and like actually physically read it, it would have been nice to look up all the stuff, because it was so much stuff.
I know that I would love to
have
look
like
up
been
more.
able to do
I
maybe
did it
one
a
of
little
these
bit.
days. Yeah.
And if there were pictures in the actual book too, I always love that. But yeah, I would look up a little bit of stuff, or like, wait, what date did this align with this? Or I'd look up an actor at the time, but not as much as I wanted to.
I know. So I would definitely do that if you're reading. But anyway, it has an 83% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Where can we watch it? Does it say
it does
streaming?
Say, where can I watch 30-something? Disney Plus?
Oh.
Hold on.
Hold the phone. That is something that I do have a subscription for. I would be interested in at least watching a couple episodes.
I know, just for the fun, because it sounded good. Good, yeah, I agree.
The other thing that he said about, I think it was like while they were doing 30 something, he and Marshall, like people kept trying to say, like, oh, you'd be
seeing it on there.
Well, anyway, we'll do a little digging.
Oh,
you'd be better off without him. Like, you don't have to work with him. And they're trying to tear them apart. And Ed was like, no, I will not be separated.
I know. I liked it too how they talked about like that they were kind of like the yin and yang to each other, and that was kind of fun.
I will say that they did talk a lot more, he did talk a lot more about like his personal life during this time.
Yeah.
He talked about like how he met his wife and all that kind of stuff, and like a random other little drama, like how he was living with that one girl when he was like younger, and all the like, so that was interesting. But I was just a little bit more interested in like the movie
Yes, I
side of
know.
it. So that's kind of what I wrote most of my notes on.
Yeah, and it's like, and he kind of like drops some of that. Like
Yeah.
we'll get like here and there, like, well, this is, what was happening.
Yeah, but after kind of the beginnings of the career, we didn't get as much of that. Okay, then
Anyway.
he brought up how Dustin Hoffman wasn't really that wonderful on set. He wasn't super pleasant.
Okay, one of the things I was thinking about during this book was like, and just other, or even just with the drama too, with It Ends With Us.
Mm-hmm.
What, like, okay, obviously an actor's role is to act, but how come they can sometimes come in there and just like,
I know, and
and I'm like, who like what it's like I get you have to like make them happy and they have like a vision for their character, but it's like, but you're supposed to be there to do the job.
I know. I think that, I mean, from what he said with the people that he kind of said that were a little bit problematic, difficult to work with, they were the bigger names.
Mhm.
And I feel like, I mean, we've talked about it too. We see it a lot more, but maybe it was just kind of like starting where the agents and then the like production companies and all this stuff, or the studios, they're like, we have to make money on this. We need to, if we're going to bring in Matthew Broderick, who we'll talk about in a minute, then we want to get a good return on this. So make him happy. Like we can't lose him. And then once we kind of get into the book a little bit more, I mean, he does talk about like how studios will be like, we already put forth this much money on this,
Make it work.
If you lose the lead, then we're out a few $1 million.
Right.
And now I feel like there's even more pressure, and maybe that's why they cater to these actors even more.
It's just interesting that they can kind of like throw their weight around like
and they
that.
really can.
I know, and it's almost like, I mean, obviously it's not fair, but it does kind of like, it can ruin some of these projects. And if you're like an absolute nightmare to work with, it's just like, ugh, like I can't imagine being contractually obligated to work with somebody who's like so unhinged just because they can be.
Yeah, and the studio doesn't care because they like, make a lot of money, and they
and
don't
they're
seem
not
like
there.
that.
Yeah, it's like they're not there.
Yeah,
actually.
they're just like, they make a phone call, just make them happy, make it happen.
It's all good there, right?
So wild. So yeah, then we come into Matthew Broderick, and they originally wanted him to be in the movie Glory, which I've never seen, but I had heard about.
Yeah,
before.
I kind of heard about it a little bit too.
First of all, so this would have been like late 80s, maybe, when Glory was. But he drops that Matthew Broderick was in this fatal car accident in Ireland.
You didn't know about that?
No, I didn't.
That was the one where he, I can't remember if he says that in there, where he killed that family. Well, that was, it's kind of like that big hush hush thing. But that Jennifer Grey, they were dating at the time, and I listened to her book.
Oh,
and she, well, anyway, she was saying... Because it's like not gonna be nice. But she was saying that, well, she talked a lot about it. I'll just leave it at that.
Was she there when it happened?
I believe she was in the car, if I remember correctly.
Oh my goodness.
And they like came and got him, and then they didn't tell Matthew right away that the other people had passed away. And yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. Somehow I just like never knew about that part of his history.
I feel like it would pop up on like the Watch Mojo list, like celebrities who've done or had tragedy or whatever. Wow,
I'll have to look that up a little bit more. So
he's so private now too, so you just wonder if that has something to do with it.
Well, he was a complete nightmare.
I know, his mom was a nightmare. I kept trying to think if Jennifer Grey had said something about that too, but I just couldn't remember because it's been so long since I had
you read that one.
Her thing, but anyway.
When was Glory? Did you have it up?
Yes. 89.
Okay, so yeah, late 80s. So this would have been when it was in like production or whatever, would have been mid to late 80s. And yeah, Matthew Broderick was coming off of that car accident, and then Ed Zwick just said that he pulled a lot of crap on the set of Glory and in production. He kept quitting. He said he had problems with the script. His mom came in, which is crazy to me.
Crazy.
I mean, wouldn't you be humiliated?
Yes.
Like,
oh my gosh.
And
I wonder how old he was during that.
Oh, he would have had to have been in his late 20s, maybe. But and then yeah, like the studio just kept saying, like, you know, keep him. It's fine.
It'd be like this, like just the way that some of these actors, like specifically him, it'd just be this roller coaster all the time. It's like, what do you get out of doing that?
I know,
like,
totally walking on eggshells. And they hadn't even started like filming stuff. This was all just him reading the script.
And then it'd be like fine for a second. Yeah. And then it wouldn't be fine.
He'd
and
get
like,
a phone
what?
call. Like,
it's like, gosh.
He did say, though, on the complete opposite end, that Morgan Freeman was amazing. He was kind and easy to work with.
Yes.
And then basically same thing with Denzel Washington. And he specifically called out like the whipping scene that was in the movie Glory, which is about, you know, a lot about like race and in the war, in a war and everything like that. But how like he almost like broke Denzel Washington
he kind of like
down.
went behind, or I don't want to say behind his back because it was happening right there, but he's just like didn't really tell him.
Yeah, he was a little
like,
sneaky. So he, you know, they talk about what they're gonna do in the scene, and they said however many times he was gonna get hit with this whip, but for the last take, he just couldn't get him there emotionally when he wanted. And so for the last one, he just like never told him to stop.
Yeah, and the actor kept whipping him. Then finally got the one little stream.
Yeah, that he needed. And then he say that like Denzel, like they didn't talk
for a little bit.
Yeah, for a little bit after that. But then it was fine. It was just, and I think, I mean, I will never know that type of deep-rooted historical trauma, but I mean, that had to feel so real.
I know.
For Denzel Washington, that he probably did have to kind of sit in it for a little bit. And same with Ed Zwick. I feel like it was uncomfortable, you know?
I know. I'm like, I like that he told that story.
Me too.
Though, because he could have easily been like, oh no, I didn't do anything wrong ever. And he kind of like put himself in kind of a bad light.
Yeah, he did. But then, I mean, that movie, I know I've heard it's a very powerful film, even though I've never seen it. But, and then, there was that one teacher and coach thing that like he always really liked from back when he was in school, and then he like went and saw the movie Glory, and he like really loved it, and I thought it was sweet that he put that in there too, because it was like that's who he wanted to be impressing, you know. Okay, so then he talks a little bit about like his dad and how he had a difficult relationship with him, that he was a drunk, there was a divorce, he had a feeling of shame, and so that kind of like was always eating at him a little bit in the back of his mind. All right, so then we come to 1992 with Shakespeare in Love.
And Julia Roberts and her.
Yeah, I liked this part.
I know, this is what I also kind of love that he said that she told him that she can't not fall in love with her co-stars. I was like, it was just like confirming everything. I know,
but isn't
we ever want to know?
Like, I would probably be that exact same way.
I know. And it's like you're getting paid to, and like having to go out of your way to have this really amazing chemistry with someone.
And like we've said before, okay, if I'm paired with one of the most handsome men in Hollywood, and I have to pretend to be in love with them, I'm going to actually fall in love.
No, it's not going to happen. Like, come on.
So Julia Roberts, he wanted for that main role, and she was fresh off of her breakup with Kiefer Sutherland, which I forgot that bad boy Kiefer Sutherland and her dated. And then at one point they were on the plane and they were sharing that bed, and that's when she, they had this really like intimate moment kind of where she's spilling her guts and said, I can't help falling in love with my co-stars. So it was like Kiefer Sutherland, Dylan McDermott, Liam Neeson, or like the ones, I think he even said them in the book. And then she wanted Daniel Day-Lewis to play Shakespeare.
She was like dead set on it.
Like she wanted him to be her next conquest.
And then it's like, no, like he's doing it.
Yeah,
like,
I can get him to do it. I can get him to do it.
And then it's like, he's not doing it.
Yeah, and she like seemingly did get him to do it. And then he was like, no, Ed, I can't do this.
So you're schmoozing her.
But he literally said that she like spent the night with him. Like I couldn't. He was airing it out. Like,
and it still didn't work. And then she like drops out.
Then she just completely bounces.
I was like, geez. Like that just must be like this. To think you had to like kiss this person's butt, kiss their butt, kiss their butt, trying to get this other person hired. I'm like, okay, fine, we'll try to get him hired.
Yeah.
And then he won't. And then it's like, actually, I'm not going to be on
and
this
then
product
she's
after
gone.
all of that. And interviewing all those other guys.
Remember when they were all downstairs and she's like, I'm not going to come down. I'm not doing a chemistry test. Daniel Day-Lewis is going to do it.
And then he's literally like, they're all here for you.
They're literally downstairs.
And then he has to like go down there and tell them.
Hey, sorry.
She's not coming.
Yeah. That was kind of funny. And if it wasn't
a fun story.
Julia Roberts, you'd be like, oh my God.
What
a
nightmare.
horrid person.
It did make me wonder about her and George Clooney, though.
I know.
A little suspicious.
Well, all signs point to yes.
Anywho.
So after she leaves and checks out of the production, it's totally shut down. And that pretty much just gets like shelved for quite some time. And then this is where I got really scared because he like skips ahead and doesn't even talk about Legends of the Fall, and I was like, oh my God,
I know.
what?
I got a little confused too when it was like it kind of went out of order.
But I get it because he wanted to just finish the Shakespeare in Love thing. But I was so scared. I'm like, no, please, that's what I want. Okay, so then he says that
you get the
trigger warning.
Harvey Weinstein.
In 1994, and this was crazy. Like I thought this story was crazy.
I know. It's just, I mean, obviously now we know all these horrible stories about him, but gosh, he was a freaking
he was a little sneak.
He was awful.
He was just a little rat.
There's been so many times in these audiobooks where
the voice,
everybody's impression of Harvey Weinstein.
His was pretty good.
Yeah,
I even wrote that down. I'm like, he did the Weinstein voice.
I know, it's just funny where it's like they can't just say how he like they have to imitate
do
how
it.
he talks.
I know. So he basically steals Shakespeare in Love, and he was horrible about it. And Ed Zwick had already done a ton of work to kind of get it to where it was with the script and everything, and then it was ready to go, except he lost his leads. And then Harvey just came in and snatched it up for himself. And then this is where things went off the rails, which if he's doing this to like a peer in the industry, you can only imagine what he was doing with these actresses. He kept calling him late at night, trying to intimidate him, leaving these voicemails.
Insane.
Yeah, literally
like it's so
crazy.
Unhinged. He's like threatening him. It's like, what? And like, obviously, Ed Zwick had like bigger projects and stuff, but it's like, what do you have to gain to like just be so awful?
Because basically, Ed was trying to fight him for it and say, no, like, you're not going to just take this from me. And Harvey was pissed about it and would not let it go.
An immature little child.
But so after all of that, and Ed's like, fine, you can call and be mad and intimidate
Right.
me. Like, I'm not backing down. Then they meet at the Peninsula Hotel suite, and Harvey starts crying.
I know, like just unhinged. So it's like, well, that didn't work. How else can I manipulate
Yes.
this person?
So then they just kept going back and forth. Like, Ed is now on the movie as like a producer, and he goes back and forth with threatening to kick Ed off. And then this is where he talks about like Harvey's rule, where the president of this, or Harvey rule was put in place because of Harvey Weinstein, where it said a president of a studio can't give himself a producer credit, and they must have a real role in producing the movie, because he would just throw himself on as a producer when he didn't do anything. So then the Golden Globes come around, and we all know that the movie was made with Gwyneth Paltrow and all this stuff.
His main gal.
Yeah. And the Golden Globes come around, and he even says, he's like, they're illegitimate and corrupt, but like, we won't go there. And they're awarded for best screenplay. And then the guy, and I didn't write down his name, but he went up there and was like, sorry, Harvey, you're going to be mad, but I've got to thank Ed Zwick first, which is a real like salt in the wound on that one. But then for the Oscar speech, when they won for that, I guess it was decided ahead of time that Harvey Weinstein would not be speaking for that. But then one of the other producers, it was a woman, I don't know who she was, but she's like obviously had done a little deal behind Ed's back, and instead of giving him the mic, she gave it to Harvey. And that was where, what did he say? He was like, I just wanted to shove him into the orchestra pit.
Like, that guy is just such
he's horrible
nightmare. I know, just petty.
He's just like
nightmare.
The worst person ever. And even just with hearing that, you're like, what a like horrible person.
I know. And like, just hearing that whole part, and you're like, gosh, and then everything, obviously the horrible things he was doing, it's like, ugh.
It's just so disgusting.
Wonder.
I mean, he's just a skis ball.
I know.
All around. But I mean, obviously he weaseled his way to the top somehow. I don't know how the heck he did it, but anyway, so I wish that we had like more. I'm sure he had so many more stories just about, and things that like he probably just heard in the industry too. I wish that I could read a whole book about that.
I know, just the atrocities.
I know. All right, then he doubles back to Legends of the Fall, which was basically happening while Shakespeare in Love was kind of happening. So it was kind of overlapping, which I just love. I loved every second of this. So he saw there was some little talk about, first of all, Brad Pitt was featured on 30-something. And I think, wasn't it when like he was on set, like there was all this like, ooh.
And so everybody was like fawning over him, and it's like, oh, this Brad Pitt guy. And all of a sudden he's like a pretty big deal now.
Right. But originally he wanted Tom Cruise to play Tristan, who Brad Pitt ends up playing, but they couldn't get TC for this one. But this is where he says Tom Cruise is a director's dream.
Yeah, he definitely talked really highly about Tom Cruise.
Yeah. And he like didn't even really like, he made it seem like he didn't even talk about the Scientology thing. He was just like, he legitimately is amazing.
Right. And that was probably a little bit before it was super ingrained into Tom Cruise. But it is nice to hear, because it's like you're hearing all these stories about all these difficult actors, and then to have somebody who actually seems like easy to work with was kind of like nice to hear.
Yeah. Refreshing, which we get more about TC later in the book. So we couldn't get him. So then he ends up getting Brad. And he says that like this production was way over budget. He's like fighting with Brad Pitt on the set. And I wouldn't say that he didn't make it seem like he was bad to work with.
Right. But they were having like creative differences.
Yeah. And like, what did he kind of say that like there were some parts where like he couldn't get the emotion that he wanted out of Brad Pitt.
Yeah, and then they wanted, like, they were having problems with that character anyway, like trying to make him more sympathetic. And even when they had like test screenings,
they
had
ended
to
up
change
cutting the stuff out with like Brad or Tristan kissing like his sister, the brother's wife. They took that out, which, and this is what we said. I think we said it in another episode when we were just like talking about this a little bit, but like, there's no way they can do that now. I don't understand how they did these screen tests. Like,
I know.
Did everybody had to have signed NDAs or something?
Right. And not to bring up the Horror Virgin again, but they've been talking about that. Like, they'll talk about some movies where it's like they do the test screening and then they're like, oh, that did really well. Like, now it can have a theatrical release. And it's like, I'm like, are they still doing this now?
I know, because when he talked about it, it wasn't even like that. It was, okay, based on
what's
this,
working?
We're going to re-edit the movie and then put it out. I mean, I don't think that happens today.
I know. And like, I don't feel like it does either. Or maybe it is and we're just not hearing about it, or what?
Maybe if we lived in, Hollywood and stuff. But as a side note, I feel like they're not even making as many movies there now like they used to.
Right. It's like cheaper to just send everybody to somewhere else.
Right. So,
but it did, because we've heard like the rumblings about the It Ends With Us and how there was like the Blake edit and then the Justin edit. And I wonder what would have happened if they would have screened that with people, which one so maybe they just aren't really doing that now. But I also feel like people are just trying to shove out these movies as quick as they can now. There's like no love.
Well, that was the thing with this is that when he would talk about stuff, like at one point, I don't know what movie it was, but he was like, okay, we're 5 years in now and we're still, I'm like, oh my gosh.
I know, it was like mind blowing how long some of because even when you heard like, we're like, why was this in production? Like pre-production for 7 years? Like that doesn't make any sense. And then this book kind of like clarified a lot of that in the way he was telling the stories.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I mean, sometimes just working with the script it takes a few years and then you're not even getting into like casting and stuff yet. It's
in like a production company to
pick it up. It was really interesting. So I wish that we would have had more information on Legends of the Fall though, because I just think that there had to have been so many like juicy little bits.
I know,
from
and
that.
he really was just like this person who played this person was really good.
Yeah.
She did perfectly. We found her through watching her on some show and blah blah blah. And I'm like,
and her chemistry was great with Brad. Like there wasn't a lot of like on set story except for the one where he said that like they had an explosion like literally on set and everybody felt really uncomfortable.
I know. And this was the movie too where they were like they had to change when they were filming it, like daylight and stuff, and it was like all this technical nightmares.
So I wish that we had more there, and I love that young Brad Pitt. Like I'm starved for.
You know what? We like that movie star again. It's like, where are the movie stars?
I know we're never gonna get them back. We just need to face facts. Okay. Then he did My So-Called Life with Claire Danes. And I didn't know.
I mean, I haven't watched that show, but people have talked about it.
Heard about
I had no idea that was this guy, the same guy that did Legends of the Falls.
Which is so wild because and I could be wrong about this, but it just doesn't, you don't really hear about directors having that kind of
like going from
depth,
show,
and
like because all his stuff is like all over the place.
I mean, you could say like if we're just saying like Glory and Legends of the Fall, I mean those are more like period dramas, but they're still depicting very different stories. Yeah.
And he's like doing sitcoms and like
Yeah.
a teen girl
Right. I mean,
sitcom.
totally different than anything else he's done. He said that networks didn't really want to pick this up because they didn't want to depict a teenager in a like not wholesome way or that was kind of rebellious. But that's kind of the point of the show. So that was kind of a point of contention. And I don't think that
it was ahead of its time.
It was, and it didn't last very long.
No,
right?
It seemed like, didn't he say it was like 1 or 2 seasons?
Which is weird because, I mean, I think he's even said in this that it like got a resurgence and kind of like
and then it was like
became famous after the fact, basically, because I didn't.
Oh, it only had 1 season.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that it was that short lived because I've heard of it.
Oh, I'm on a poor rating. Its initial 19 episode run.
Wow, so that wasn't a lot.
No,
but. I mean, it made quite the impression. It's like a little cult following, you know, kind of.
It's always sad when you hear about that stuff. You're like, this could have
been
so much more. But it all worked out, so.
I know. He then talks about doing another movie with Denzel Washington. He was just like really happy to do that. And just the way he talked about Denzel, it just seemed like he was really wonderful to work with and super professional.
Again, another movie star.
I know. This was interesting when we're in 1998 now, and he was doing The Siege, and he brought up that Bruce Willis was kind of having trouble with lines then.
Yeah.
And
because I didn't hear about this book, but I remember having a clip of this book talk about that. And then when I was listening to that, I was like, oh, that was from this book.
Yeah. And that's just really interesting because, I mean, he even kind of said, like, I have no idea now that we know about this diagnosis. Right. Was that a sign or is it coincidental? Like, we don't know. Because that was like 30 years, right? Like, but I just thought that was interesting. Like, okay, was he really
like
having issues then? And like, were there signs of this condition then?
Right. And then like the bigger he got, he could just kind of like
fake it more, like put an earpiece, who cares? Yeah, that was just interesting. And then this was the movie too where he talked a lot about the 9/11 stuff, which this was honestly crazy to me.
I know that he like predicted
I mean, it was almost scary. And he even kind of said
this
like
info.
I don't even know. Yeah. And the whole movie is, I mean, essentially it was like 9/11.
Literally.
And
they were like kind of mad at him.
Yeah, like, for like doing it. And then 3 years later when 9/11 happened, like this movie was like, whoa, you know, like an episode of like The Simpsons or something when they go back and they're like, they predicted this. So then he had to kind of do all these interviews about it again.
Like, well, this is how I knew this was going to happen, basically.
Which is just crazy. And I mean, I guess when you listen to him say it, it's like, well, the signs were there, I guess. Yeah,
I guess this wasn't that hard to figure out.
But it is.
Especially at that time, like when everything that was going on. And
it is just, you know, what was I listening? I think it might have been like The Town, maybe. But you just don't even get these type of political movies anymore because people, I think that they're afraid. Oh yeah, it was because they were talking about, remember that movie The Interview with about South Korea, or North Korea, and then they ended up, I forgot that this happened, but after like that movie, the whole Sony breach, and they got all their like emails and all this stuff leaked, and it was allegedly from like North Korea being mad about the movie and all this stuff. But ever since then, it kind of seems like movies that are depicting like real like threats, like Russia, for example, like we're not seeing that anymore because we can't risk it.
right? Even in that like comedy space. Because I
Yeah.
listened to Seth Rogen's book and he was like talking about what an absolute nightmare that situation
Oh,
was.
I can
They're
only
like,
imagine.
But it's just supposed to, like,
It's
why
supposed to be
can't we?
funny.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're just like, why can't we make this
Yeah.
movie? And it was just wild. And he talked about the Sony thing. But
Well, because back in, years and decades ago, it's like we would have, granted it was after the fact, but we'd have movies about World War II and Hitler.
right.
And it's like we're using Hitler, and granted he was dead,
Right.
but it's like, why that didn't cause problems to
Right.
this extreme,
I know, and I think too, like just the political climate now, it's like everyone is so divided on
Yeah.
everything. It's like you'll lose half your audience if
Mhm.
you try to like have this type of movie.
But that is just interesting because usually those types of movies, not necessarily The Interview because that was in the comedy
Right.
space, but if it's a drama, like those do really well.
They do, yeah. Like you had like Zero Dark 30, all those types of movies, but we're not getting them
anymore.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
What a shame.
I know.
Especially
it
because
is.
these are like historical events and like
I know.
you're basing off of like real people.
Yeah.
It's like, why can't we do this anymore? But
Yeah, even like American Sniper, that was
yeah.
that was kind of a hero story, but it also showed stuff about like combat and the war and everything like that.
Wasn't there another one too? There's like Zero Dark 30 and then
like
there
Fargo was one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, Ben Affleck.
I know. It's like,
yeah,
where are all these?
we don't get those anymore.
No.
And I enjoy those movies.
I know.
I have to be in the right mood for them.
Yeah. Yeah. To be an
I
emotional
have to
mood.
actually pay attention.
I know.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. Maybe that's the problem. We don't have the attention spans
we
anymore.
Can't do it anymore. Okay, so after that, he talks about how he loves Evan Rachel Wood, Dakota Fanning, and Claire Danes. They're like his girls that they were dreams, basically. Which, small side note about Evan Rachel Wood, just because I saw this thing and I was really confused by it, but apparently Marilyn Manson said something about like he has proof that she like forged documentation from like the FBI or something like that. And I'm like, okay, like I don't believe that, but whatever. And I go in the comments and I am not kidding. Sure. People are like, I believe him. Justice.
I know.
She should be prosecuted. I was like, what?
I know. Well, that was like that whole, I'm pretty sure it was her saying that and stuff, is like he could be evil in plain sight. Like but he was being honest about it. So it's fine. It's like he can be like this abusive nightmare and say all these disturbing things, but it's all part of the aesthetic. So
which
people are
like,
fine.
And also, if she, and I don't know all the details to what he's talking about here, what type of documents he's meaning, but if anybody does forge something like that, that's not okay.
Right.
That's illegal, whatever. But I don't think that takes away from what she
actually
experienced.
Happened. Exactly. It's like as a victim of something like that, you aren't believed. So you have to go above and beyond just to get people to listen to you.
Especially with somebody who is as big as he is.
Right. And has the fan base that's so loyal.
Well, yeah, and they're still really loyal because I was totally shocked.
I've been, just aside, the comment section on stuff lately has gone like before it was like, well, we support the women like blindly. Now they're like retracting that with everything. I'm like,
which again, can't we find a happy medium here? Like, can we just find out what the truth is and go off of that?
Right. Instead of just like flip flopping. Yeah. It's like insane.
Like I can't even read it. It just freaks me out almost.
It does. Yeah. It's like scary, but
I know. then I kind of just skipped ahead to 2018 in here. And he had the movie Trial by Fire with Shia LaBeouf that he wanted to do it with him, and he was really skeptical about him at first, obviously, because that was a weird time. But then he met him and stuff and was actually really impressed. But unfortunately, Shia ends up dropping out of the film and he never talks to him again.
It's like, I think we're good, but
yeah,
hey.
but I don't know. I liked how he would say that too, where he said it about a few other people where he's like, we haven't spoken since then and I don't really know why.
I know. I wonder if like these actors like get super embarrassed or something, or if they don't get their way,
right,
they kind of like whatever,
or if maybe they don't want to say, hey, I actually got a better offer with something else, or I mean, that would be kind of, it's like when you like do go on 2 job interviews and then you hear from the first one and they want you, but you really want the second, and you've got to be like, can I have a couple extra days to think about it?
And the whole thing's just
you're
awkward.
Just waiting for the other offer. So now we get into Tom Cruise, and he is doing The Last Samurai, and this was like another really big, kind of like historically based drama, and right up Tom Cruise's alley. And he like goes to his house, right? And he like really is trying to like recruit Tom to be on here, and he's trying to impress him by bringing these like relics, and he's like, this is my vision, and Tom's just like eating it up.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
There's always Tom Cruise impressions and stuff too.
But he also was totally like glowing reviews for Tom Cruise, and he's said that he always wants to keep improving his craft, and that he's just so obviously passionate about what he's doing and tries to be upbeat. And at one point with the movie, I think yet again, this is what I had said, what we had talked about like a couple episodes ago, where like they taught these horses how to fall, and they like brought this whole community of people to Australia because there aren't like Asian people in Australia. Like the budget for this movie was astronomical. So I think he was over budget, behind, feeling really overwhelmed, and like Tom like didn't know what to do with that kind of. And then Ed saw him, I think the next day, and that's where Tom's like, guess what we get to do today? We get to make a movie. Like so upbeat. And then Ed Zwick was like, I realized that like Tom doesn't need me to, he needs me to be like the strong director that's like pushing the ship forward. He doesn't want, or like maybe can't see him in a vulnerable place, because I think then Tom's like, well, then what are we doing? Which I honestly like, that's kind of relatable to anybody's workplace. Like if you see your boss essentially like, losing
nervous, you're like, huh?
Like wait a second.
You said everything was fine.
You're supposed to know what we're doing. What's happening? So, but it was just like really,
it was cool to see too, like somebody who's like has all these great works behind them already and still get nervous. Still get like stressed out.
I know.
And obviously that's more like high stakes and stuff
for
than,
sure.
Like, other people, but it still was like, oh, okay, so you get sad and unsure of yourself.
Relatable.
And depressed. Like it makes me feel good.
He's just like us. But yeah, just the way that he talked about this movie was just so crazy. Like I couldn't even comprehend everything that he talked about with filming this. Like this is stuff too that he talked about with like the lighting and when to film, and even just locations and costumes and everything. I mean, I could not get over the horse thing.
I know.
Like that they wanted to use real horses because the fake horse that they had did not look realistic at all. So they literally got these people that trained horses to fall, and they trained all these horses. I mean, that is just like, do you think that's done today, like
I
that
don't
kind
know.
of
Well,
attention to
do we
detail?
even have like those types of movies anymore?
Probably not.
Like
And
just like these big blowout things, like that would just be insane
well,
to be on one of those huge, big budget masterpieces.
action sets like that. I guess, we can say like CGI is better now than it
Right.
was then. But even still, I mean, I've seen some movies that are more modern films and that definitely cost a lot to make.
Right.
And I can see when they're using the CGI. I mean,
Right.
remember, was it Superman like a few years ago where like they had to edit off like facial hair or something, and it was so awful, and
Oh, I don't
everybody
remember
was like
that.
talking about it. It was something like that, and it was like, what? Like, why
Like,
is this happening? Like,
2020
yeah,
something?
we shouldn't be in this era and have a movie that's supposed to be this huge blockbuster hit
Right.
where we can see these types of like editing things.
Right.
And with these other movies, I feel, or older movies, I think that's what made them more powerful was,
More practical effects.
Yeah, they brought in real people to be the extras. And
Right.
they didn't just,
And I think like,
use AI.
Right. And I think that goes to the greater like conversation around the AI. It's like, well, we don't really need the people anymore. We can just, this is simpler.
Mhm.
But it's like, but it's not authentic anymore.
Yeah.
Like if you are using fake horses and all
Right.
this stuff, it's like having that actual practical effects is so effective and so good.
Well, not only to the audience too, but imagine being an actor in that
Right.
situation. I mean, for Tom Cruise to be surrounded by hundreds of people,
Right.
probably
And you're like, oh, I'm really
Yeah,
here. Like,
right.
this is really happening.
right, like you're probably going to get way more of a genuine
Mhm.
emotion or genuine reaction when they're actually in the scene rather
Right.
than being in front of a green screen and they're like, oh,
Mhm.
we'll add it in post.
Right.
Like that's a big difference.
It is.
But I've never seen that movie either. Have
I
you?
haven't.
I kind of want to
I know,
see
like
it.
that one actually.
I mean, I know the iconic like Tom with his
Right.
long hair and stuff.
But I want to like, that'd be like my
Now that
uncle
we
would be
know-
into that one.
Now that we know the insider information,
now I
it'd be
really
interesting to
wanna see
watch it.
I know you when like just during this because we don't get like because even when these like celebrities do their memoirs, they don't talk as much about like the acting process or
No,
like the
they
movie
don't.
process on their huge like thing that they're known for. But this
Mhm.
was like fun. It's like wow, there's so much effort that goes into some of these projects, and I want to watch them
Yeah.
to support all that effort.
I know. Like we don't even realize it.
Right.
Moving ahead to 2006, we have Blood Diamond, which this was another one I didn't realize he was a part
I
of.
know, literally.
And another movie I have not seen.
I've actually seen that one because of
Leo.
somebody.
I know. We can say it. It's fine. And he said that Leo was not pretentious at
Mhm.
all. And, were they actually in, they
I
filmed
believe
in
so, yeah.
Africa, right?
South Africa.
South Africa. And then they're at this like really small village
Mhm.
and it didn't have like good water or something.
Mhm.
And when they're leaving, Leo just like
Yeah,
quietly
donates.
donated. Like
Aw.
these people came in to put in this new well and they're like, what the heck? And they're like, oh, he donated it.
And
Like
it's
he,
like he didn't say anything.
yeah,
he
he
just
just did it. And kind of
And-
saying that he always does these charitable things on every set that he goes on.
I know, which is awesome, especially because like again, like you're going to these places, kind
Mhm.
of like disrupting these people. They're like taking you in,
Yeah.
and then to do that for them is really awesome.
Especially a country like that too, because where they were in South Africa, it wasn't like it was, and again, I haven't seen the movie, but from what I've seen of it, they weren't filming in like the city part
Right.
for stuff like that.
Sorry, I was just gonna say it is so interesting too to like you always think like the celebrities are like living this glamorous set life.
Mm-hmm.
But when you hear these like actual stories, like, no, they were like really there in the
Yeah.
elements. It was hot.
Right.
They kept passing out. I mean, she didn't say that for this, but like you'll hear stuff like that and you're like, really? I thought you would just be being
in the hotel
pampered
somewhere.
Yeah.
I know.
Or they'll be like, it was freezing and they had to keep stopping.
Yeah,
and it's like,
put coats on us. And well, even Ed said, like, I don't sleep much. Like, it's literally, I am there and shooting for like 15 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I go home, I go over dailies, I do this, and then I sleep for 4 hours and then I'm back. Like, it really is exhausting. And granted, you know, actors probably don't have that long of a schedule for shooting, but maybe sometimes they do. You know, I think
especially
it just
if you're
depends.
the main or the lead.
Yeah. And then who was the female lead in that movie?
Ooh, I don't remember.
They were in the trailer. I can't remember who it was.
Oh, yeah.
This is like, funny. So,
shopping.
Yeah, she was Leo's and the female lead are in the like makeup trailer and stuff. And he's looking.
Jennifer Connelly.
Yeah, which he loved Jennifer Connelly too. And Leo's flipping through a Victoria's Secret magazine and Ed's kind of like, what are you doing there? And then Jennifer's like, oh, he's shopping like for a new girlfriend.
Literally. And that was a clip thing that I had seen floating around from this book too, but I don't remember it being connected to the book.
Yeah. I just thought that was hilarious.
Like, oh gosh.
I'm not even embarrassed for him by that. Let's see. Oh, I don't know. I talked about like the Defiance movie about World War II, and he got that handwritten note from Kirk Douglas. And it made Ed want to give handwritten notes like that to people going forward. And then we get to Love and Other Drugs in 2008, and this is when he's diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and it really was, I mean, kind of crazy timing because he's doing the movie about cancer. Yeah. So that he really went into kind of a lot about like how he was feeling during that time, like physically and mentally, and how he was worried about like telling people about his diagnosis because he didn't want it to affect production and getting the movie made and all this stuff. But he did sit down with Jake Gyllenhaal and Annie, as they all call her, and told them, and they were like really supportive and amazing.
Yeah, they seemed like that. Did you see that movie? Me too. It seemed like a really like close, just kind of simple cast thing, which I thought was kind of a cool experience, especially when he's doing all these like huge projects, and then to have this more like intimate thing was fun.
I mean, not a full rom-com because it was serious, but yeah, totally different from Blood Diamond that he just did. I also think it's interesting because, you know, I don't think that Anne Hathaway necessarily gets the best like edit sometimes.
I know. There's
something about her.
Well, it's like everybody loved her, and she's such a delight in the Princess Diaries movies, which is like, you know, such a huge movie from our childhood and stuff. And then all of a sudden it like people flipped on her. Yeah. But yet they still loved like Devil Wears Prada and stuff. And then
Les Miserables.
Yeah. And it's like, but she does seem genuine and delightful, but it's just like coming across
it's like
strange.
She comes across kind of pretentious, but I don't think she really is, because then when you hear him talk about her, I mean,
she was lovely.
Praise like up and down. I mean, he could not, I mean, really, like so much he talked about her was just glowing.
Right.
So I just think that's kind of interesting because it's just sometimes things that she does, you're like, oh, come on.
Right.
But then you hear about her as an actual actor and like working, and she sounds like a delight.
I know. She sounds easy to work with.
yeah, and tries really hard,
Right.
you know. The one thing that I thought was interesting about this was that, he wanted Leonardo to be in this one instead of Jake Gyllenhaal. He talked about how, so Jake Gyllenhaal's character in this movie is like a playboy and like, you know, a schmoozer or whatever. And he said that he was out with him at like a bar or something. It was just the two of them. And he's like, hey, prove to me that you can be this guy.
Right.
And I want you to get that girl's number. Like a girl walked by and looked at him or something. He's like, go get her number. And he's like, no, like he was dating Reese Witherspoon at the time. Right. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do it. He's like, if you prove to me you can play him, you will do this. It won't be hard for you. Like, come on. And so he like did it and came back and like sheepishly put the number on the table. I just love Jake Gyllenhaal.
I love that he like told this little story. Like, just I love those stories of like the director, just that one-on-one,
Me
like
too.
with the people, and it's just, or like the actors, and it's just like believing in each other
It's
and
so,
getting to know each other.
like magical kind
I know.
of.
It's like, oh man, and just like the reliance on each
Yeah.
other too. And you're, because didn't he end up saying something at some point where he was like, you know, these actors can be kind of like a pain, but it's like we really do need them,
Yeah.
and like just to, you know, make sure they're happy and feel comfortable with what they're
And that's
doing.
the main thing. Yeah. And throughout everything, I think from, obviously this is just his own perspective, but it really seems like that was in the front of his mind.
Yeah, and he does seem really like reflective on it too. And he's like, you know, because even when he's telling the story, he's like, I think even when he was talking about Brad Pitt, he's like, yeah, we kind of like didn't get along some of the time, but like he, you know, whatever, blah, blah,
He's
blah.
always like, you know, I learned stuff.
Right.
They taught me this. Like, I've changed since then. You know, I was a newer director. Like, he totally takes
like I wasn't
accountability.
fully in the right. Yeah. And like I totally get where, because even when he was talking about Matthew Broderick too, he was like, I mean, I think it was like his dad had passed away.
Yeah,
and then,
he that's when he had.
And then he's like, after I met the mom, I was like, oh, no wonder he's like acting this way and stuff. So anyway, I just thought that was
Yeah,
nice.
I like how it really makes him seem I don't know, just like down to earth.
Yeah.
So then with, what was I saying? Okay, they didn't have a intimacy coordinator in there in this movie, and that was kind of different. So they ended up like kind of watching a lot of other movies with like sex scenes and stuff and saying like, okay, how do we want to do ours?
Right.
And so they really ended up, like, I think getting really close and comfortable with each other, and then being able to do the sex scenes in Love and Other Drugs and make them seem really genuine.
Right.
Yeah. And he even shared like a couple other like funny little things about like the, like, what do they call them? The little like privacy things.
Or the or is it modesty?
Yeah, a modesty
patch
like
or something. I can't
little
remember.
fluff.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like, just, it really seemed like this cast got along really well.
It really is like kind of weird to think about, like truly think about that sometimes they literally are naked with just that thing there. I'm like, I almost think that's like, but that's probably more protective than having like underwear on.
Right.
It's like, oh my gosh, do they have to get tested for stuff?
They probably do. I mean, I would think that they do. Oh, the one thing he said was, when he was talking about including sex scenes in movies, he said sometimes it doesn't make sense to not have them in there because it's not real then.
Right.
Like, and I think that was just a really interesting take on it, because sometimes
they're
when
so
you're
controversial.
Yeah. But I think that you can tell, like, when you're watching a movie and you're like, okay, another sex scene, like they're just throwing them in there, like, because it's racy or whatever.
Right.
But then there's other times where, like, even I think that, you know, not to keep bringing up It Ends With Us, but
it's been, but I feel like this book really like when all that stuff came out, I'm like, oh, this is like all connecting.
Yeah. I
Anyway.
just felt like the way that they included
Mhm.
this, because you said there were a lot more of like sexy
Mhm.
parts in the book, but the way that they included it in the movie, I think that they gave you enough to show you the idea of it.
That it
And-
was like a hot
Yeah.
relationship. Like, even though he's like a little mean, they had just like this intense
Yeah.
chemistry.
And there was, I mean, it wasn't like a full on sex scene,
Right.
but like we get the gist of it.
Right.
But like if they didn't put that in or just like simply
Right.
alluded to it where
Or,
it
like,
was,
they
you know,
just
the
kissed and then
or
it
like the
went
fall
away.
into bed
Right.
and then it cuts, you know, like sometimes that's like really like you couldn't have put it in because
Right.
like that's what would naturally happen in a relationship or like for that one night stand. Like,
Mhm.
why are you not including that?
Right.
So I like how he brought that up because it really is a big conversation.
I know,
to
like
have.
always.
Yeah, and even with like your actors, because
Mhm.
I mean, there's some that don't want to do them at all.
I know. Or like they're always being asked
Yeah.
about them, and you know, it's like a whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so intense.
So yeah, I just thought that was an interesting take. And he said that the cover of the movie actually wasn't even supposed to be the
Right.
cover at all. That was like a private picture that they just took like
Mhm.
for themselves on the set. And then he said like the one he ended up getting in bed with them as like a funny thing. And so that was kind of, I love those little like tidbits.
I know.
And then he said that Anne Hathaway was like really kind after the movie was over and stuff, and just super understanding about the cancer thing and everything. But I think he even said that they haven't like connected after.
It definitely felt like just even when he was talking about this stuff, just work friends.
Right.
And
Like I'll
then
love
you're-
you and then leave you.
Yeah, it's like we had that good time. There's nothing wrong, but we just don't work together anymore.
Which is so crazy though, because it almost felt like for him, I mean, he's sharing these really intimate and sometimes vulnerable stories.
Right.
And then it almost feels like he is a little sad by some of
he's
the
like,
people that he
"Aw."
doesn't. Because
It's like that summer camp thing where it's like, gosh, I miss
But we
that
had such a
moment.
good
I know.
time,
Can we
you know?
keep doing
yeah,
that?
or like, you know, you nowadays, like you text somebody and then you text a couple times and it just kind of falls off. And you're like,
Right.
but why did that happen? Like I really, we got
I
along
know.
so well.
But they're just getting schmoozed by the next
I know.
director.
And that's what I think I feel Anne Hathaway is. Like she's gonna leave that impression with everybody that she works
Like,
with
everyone
and
like,
for.
Oh, yeah. Like people probably fall in love with her all the time.
And she's just like, all right, on to the next
Yeah.
job. Yeah. Okay, then kind of to wrap up the book, it went to 2012 to 2020, and this is where he talks about how like the large scale movies for adults that have been made in the past aren't being made now, and that he's starting to do more intimate projects like for himself. And like they've talked about In the Town. I know a lot of other people have talked about, I think they might have talked about it on Juicy Scoop recently too, but like those big like superhero and comic movies are really just like taking over. And
franchises.
yes, and
remakes.
it's really just altered what type of movies are being made.
Right. It's like the passion isn't there anymore. It's just like for the money.
Yeah. And then he talked about how what was that like committee? Oh, was it for like the Academy Awards or something?
Yeah.
He's on the committee for like directors or whatever, and he said that he's in this room with a lot of these other like big names, but they're older now and they're kind of retired, and he's like, you know, retiring isn't always a choice.
Right.
Like they don't get asked to make these big things, or they don't get the offers that they used to, and then you kind of don't really have any other choice but to just quietly slip
Go
off
away.
and
invest into something else.
you know, which was kind of sad, but
I know, it's just like it's a dying art. Cinema.
yeah, it really is though.
I know, it's like kind of depressing.
I know.
And just like things are, and I think too, like and this sounds bad, but there's almost like too much protection for people that it's like
Yeah.
almost impossible to do anything. Not that they shouldn't be protected. But
Right. I get what you
it's
mean.
like the
though.
leaps and bounds. It's like, okay, well, I'll just hire this no name because
Right. Well,
they'll
because
just do it.
think about, I mean, the thing we talked about with Glory with Denzel Washington. I mean, I don't think that that would happen today.
No.
You know, I mean, maybe again, we're talking about a completely different caliber of actor there. But
Right.
if that exact same situation happened today with a younger actor of today, that would be splashed on
I know.
TMZ
Like
so
it wouldn't
fast.
happen. Yeah.
Things would be shut down. The
Mhm.
director would be canceled.
Mhm.
Like it would just.
Even if it's in like the proper context,
Right.
it's like it's still.
Yeah.
It's like nobody wants to touch on these things anymore. And I think he even says something like, I think he was talking about that movie. Like, could a white director do this today?
Yeah, he did.
Probably not.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know,
Yeah.
but I'm guessing not. And that was like,
yeah, that's
another thing.
just his reflections on things are really interesting. And like he can tell that times are changing, whether some things might be for the better and some things are for the worse, but like times are definitely changing. And then he kind of said that throughout his career, he focused more on the movie itself and the actors and the feelings that are projected more so than the recognition that he's going to get from that movie. And again, I think that it's the other way around sometimes now.
It is.
Where we're just thinking about, oh, this will be a big one.
Right.
Oh, this will be my claim to fame, or I'll get an award. And it's like then the movie ends up being crap.
Right.
So, yeah, I really liked this book.
It was fun if you're into like the behind the scenes of the industry.
And I do wish that I would have taken my full 21 days to actually.
I know. I wish I could have digested it. That would actually be a book I wouldn't mind like owning and like revisiting.
Yeah, I really liked it. It just I would listen to another one. Like I'm sure he has so many other.
I know. Like let's
stories
get another version of this.
Just more things to dive in on. So definitely would recommend this one.
Yeah, definitely.
Even if like you don't know directors and stuff, like we don't know, but it was still really interesting to hear him talk about these. Like he dropped a lot of other people's names that if you're big into that, you probably would know a lot more. But yeah, I really liked it. I'm glad that we chose this one.
Yeah, it was a good book.
So yeah, if you read along with us, be sure to leave. We gave you some extra time for this one. So be sure to let us know what you thought. Okay, guys, it's no secret that Hannah and I have a sweet tooth, but we hate the guilt that we feel after we've binged on some of our favorite cookies, donuts, or other treats. So that's where Dough comes in. Dough is an edible cookie dough company that also has donut holes and some delicious chocolate hazelnut spreads that you can eat and not feel so guilty afterwards. These treats are made with extra ingredients that are good for you, gives you extra energy, makes you focus more, and the best part is that they are vegan and gluten-free, which is so amazing and something that you don't find all the time. And sometimes when you get vegan or gluten-free products, they taste vegan and gluten-free. But these Dough cookie doughs and donut holes do not skimp out on the flavor, and they are so delicious. We have tried the cookie dough raw and baked, and it's good either way. And one of our favorite new donut holes are the collab donut holes with Chamberlain Coffee, and it's the cinnamon sugar. And these are just so amazing. You want to eat them with your favorite cup of coffee in the morning. They're just so delicious. And the best part is that they come with some extra vitamins in there to, get your day going and help you focus a little bit more. So if you want to try these vegan, gluten-free, and delicious products, you can go to Eat Dough, and that's spelled DEUX.com to place an order. And if you use the code WaterBottle15, you can get an extra 15% off of whatever you order. That is Dough, spelled DEUX, and use WaterBottle 15 for 15% off. Okay, should we talk about a couple timely topics?
Sure.
So, one of the big things we had some big Bravo news. First of all, Tom Girardi was found guilty. Did you see that?
No.
It like randomly popped up and I thought it was fake. I have not been following that case at all. But I guess it was for like $15 million for wire fraud, which I'm sorry, no one's ever going to get that kind of money back. But he's facing up to 80 years, which again, obviously he's not going to get that because he's
about 80 years.
Already, yeah, he's
old.
Over 80 probably. But yeah, he's that's being wrapped up and they just have to sentence him. And then Brittany Cartwright filed for divorce from Jax Taylor, which I think that was a long time coming. But I know that we're a little burnt out with this kind of stuff, but with everything with the Valley, they're apparently filming, but Jax is in a facility. Like, I don't get that. I'm really confused.
I guess he's not filming, but Sheena and Lala stepped in.
Which nobody
I don't
wants.
understand why that is Jax's equivalent to
A replacement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
it doesn't make any sense. And I think that is a horrible move because people actually really liked the Valley.
I know. I thought when I saw that, I was like, well, I'm definitely not watching now.
Yeah. But I just found it interesting that, and then I saw that they said that he was given paperwork for the divorce, like in his facility, or is he not even in the facility?
It said on camera, she gives him the papers.
I don't know. I don't think that they should be married unless like major changes happen, which I don't foresee happening. So I agree that a divorce is fine. But if you're going to do that like on camera, it just seems really disingenuous.
It's just cringy.
Yeah, it really is.
I'm cringed out.
And now she's there posting like, selfies and like thriving and all this stuff. I'm like, okay, Brittany, like good for you, but tone it down, in my opinion. And we had a Bieber baby.
We did with a normal name.
I like the Blues as the middle name. It's like a little unique, but nothing crazy.
Yeah, I liked it.
Do you think they're going to call him JB?
I don't know. Jack is such a cute name. Just
I
call
know
him
it
Jack.
really is.
Yeah, so Sophia Richie had a normal name.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
They're bringing it back.
I know.
What'd she do? Eloise?
Which Samantha, named after his mother.
It's a really Eloise is a cute little name.
It is a cute name. Although, because the husband is Elliot, so it's like
that is
Eloise.
a little...
It's really close, but maybe that's why they did it. I don't know.
Well, it's fine. I mean, if they have another one, they can't possibly do it again. What's another variation of Ellie?
Eleanor.
Ellie. Yeah, Eleanor they could do. Ed Westwick got married. And another Gossip Girl alum got married that we don't really care for, so we won't talk about that.
I mean, I don't like her character. She's very pretty, though.
She is really pretty.
She's beautiful.
She is beautiful.
Oh, I was like looking on her Instagram, and she's got like kids. I had no idea she had
Did she
kids.
really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and like and I think a step kid.
Oh.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm like, is that her kid? And I like, it was.
That's interesting. The girl that Ed Westwick married has a kid too.
Really?
Well, yeah, which I didn't know until, which not that I really knew much about her. I think she's just a model.
Right.
But yeah, the kid looks to be about like 5.
Oh, wow.
And they got married in Italy. And every time I see pictures of a wedding in Italy, it just makes me so envious. Like it's always so stunningly beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Like what a dream to get married in Italy. And you could just like go out on a boat and have your veil floating behind you.
Oh, yeah.
So beautiful. And what else? Oh, did you watch the Tease music video that
I
Sabrina
did.
Carpenter? Okay, what are your thoughts?
It was fun. But I am loving the lore of the Shawn Mendes, and
I know.
I was like, I don't know. I kind of like love these like pop stars dedicating whole albums to like situationships.
I know, it's kind of amazing.
I know. I thought it was cute. Did you end up listening to the whole album?
I haven't listened to the whole thing, but I've listened to a few songs.
I thought it was like fun, like the music was really fun and stuff, but it doesn't feel like a fall.
Felt more like summer to me.
It did. But then I was like, well, maybe it could be kind of like a vibe in the fall, but I was just kind of surprised about that. But anywho, yeah, I thought the music video was funny.
I thought it was just like cute and yeah, it was fun. I'm sure that was really fun to make. But it just felt so random to me too. Like they were just like, let's do something big.
I know when the thing was like viewer discretion advised, I was like, what? And then I was like, oh,
I know.
Is gory.
And then thing after thing, you're like, oh my God. But yeah, it was cute. I thought it was.
Yeah, I thought it was cute. I thought Jenna Ortega was cute in it.
Yeah,
too.
and all the like behind the scenes pictures and stuff seemed really fun. So that's been getting a lot of press recently. And then I don't know if these were for real or if they just like, made a mock-up or whatever, but apparently Bratz
I saw
put
that.
out they made 2 little Bratz dolls of them, and then we don't know if Barry and Sabrina are still together or not, but he commented and said he wanted one. Yeah,
I know. I was wondering that too. I hope they're still together.
I know. I kind of hope so too.
Like into it.
Me too.
Then they were being all secretive again.
I mean, I think to be secretive is the way to go. I just think it is nowadays. I mean, look at Timmy and Kylie.
Right.
And I mean, we hear reports that like she's happier than she's ever been.
And then we hear like, oh, they broke up, and then you're like, wait, there's this really
they're on a PJ together.
Photo that is them, but it's
they
so
both
invasive.
Have hats on.
And it's like it feels so invasive. I want to look away.
I know, but I just think that's the way that you need to be now. I mean,
because people just want to like rip people to shreds. Like I remember I saw this like TikTok, and then they're like, okay, I really like Sabrina Carpenter, but what are we going to rip her to shreds for? Like, are we going to cancel her? What's she going to do wrong? And it's like, it's like just literally the cycle.
Let her live. Like, why do we have to even go there?
I know.
I do wonder, not to just digress about Sabrina Carpenter, but I wonder where she like goes from here, because
like this is really a fun vibe for her,
right?
But I don't know,
and she's so in this like persona and like the theme, and is she gonna stick with this for a little while? Is she gonna switch it up? I don't know.
And it's like she looks better than ever, but then like I don't know, can you sustain? I don't know, but I guess pop stars, if they're really good, are good at like evolving and stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It does kind of remind me of like the Ariana Grande, like I'm a little tiny thing.
Yeah.
That's sexual. And I don't love that. But
I know.
She's also a grown woman too.
Right.
So.
I mean, Sabrina Carpenter's
She's also a grown woman.
Yeah. And yeah, so it'll be just kind of interesting. Even though she literally just dropped that album, we're already talking about what's she going to do next. But, that's what everybody's wondering.
She was good in that movie, The Hate You Give. And I think it would be fun to kind of like see her act again, but like, and more like playing an adult. I don't know.
Well,
I'd like to see.
It seems like she's dabbling a little bit in that already with her music videos. So maybe she's dipping her little toes in the water to get back into it.
I know. And she's done 3 music videos for this album.
I know.
And that's like not very common anymore.
And 2 well, no. Did Tease come out when the album dropped, or was it the day before?
It might have been the day before.
So, I mean, definitely 2 that were the singles that the music videos were out before the album was. Yeah, that's rare.
I know, that's like the old school way of doing it. But it just seems like we're not getting like the music videos as much anymore. Like you'll get kind of like one for the main single. But it's like you don't really have to have like singles anymore.
I know. But you know, with music videos, that has just changed so much too, because we used to literally have countdowns for premieres
it's like the new
of
Lady
videos.
Gaga on E.
Yeah,
at
and
midnight.
you have to be up. Yeah, and I remember waiting up to watch it, and I was like, oh my God, that was amazing.
You know, like specifically the Judas.
Yes, and like that was what you would talk about. I mean, Beyonce music videos and just so many, even like, you know, Nicki Minaj had some good ones too. It was just like they were so big.
I know, and that would even get you more into the song.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh. And then some of them would have like a dance kind of with them in a way.
Pre-TikTok. But now it feels like with music videos that like a lot of them are just, oh, I'm singing my song and this is, you know, what's going on in the background or something.
Or here's clips from, you know, tour.
Yeah. Or like I just look good and I'm singing. Yeah. So, I mean, I think it was kind of fun that her video for this was so like theatrical.
Right. And like kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is cool.
Really different. Do you want to talk about Housewives next week and we'll just do a double?
Sure.
Just so that I don't know if I want to. I don't know if I have the energy to go in on that right now.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. And I just want to say, and we've said this before, but guys, our finger is so on the pulse because I listened to Juicy Scoop today, yesterday, and they said exactly, she had Brandy and Julie on, and they said exactly what we were saying about the Housewives and how they're going to have to do something different with reality because we're seeing everything play out like on social media and it's ruining the shows. And I just want to say that we said that months ago.
I know. And then it's like, then they go on a podcast and they're like, oh, me and Heather are friends. And you're like,
okay, season ruined.
Literally.
But if you're listening, Sirius XM, we are ready. We're ready to take it to the next level. And I think the reason why we maybe don't have a lot of listeners right now is because we just can't get the word out. But if we had a sponsorship deal from a podcasting company, like we're saying the things that everybody else is saying, sometimes even before they're saying them.
Right.
So if anybody's, if anyone has any connections with like Spotify or something, just keep that in mind. Yes. Do you have a recommendation?
Even though it's the same recommendation from last week.
Oh, the book.
Again.
Yeah, that's a great one. I'm actually going to say, I think I said it on the pod last week, I can't remember, that you got the shampoo and the hair mask.
Yeah.
I got the mousse from Blake Brown's company, and I loved how it kept my hair smelling delicious.
I know, my hair, I washed it last night and I could still smell it.
Yeah, and like I know
everyone hates Blake.
I know this
right
could
now.
be, what brings us down.
This might be the only bottles I get.
I know.
And I like it.
They have restocked at Target.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
I'm shocked.
So, I mean, that might be the only restock, but
I was like,
she's got to have this stuff in warehouses somewhere. And if we talk about it and tell her we like it, maybe she'll give us some.
I genuinely like it. I know we all hate her for some reason.
But like, it was good.
I know.
And even it kept my hair like not looking greasy for like an extra day.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about the shampoo and everything. And then I've seen some not so nice comments when people are like, her hair doesn't even look good anyway.
Oh, come on.
And they're like, I didn't even think it looked good on Gossip Girl. I'm like, shut up. Like, I literally was like, shut up.
I can't hear that.
It looks frizzy. The promo ad doesn't even look good. And then when she said she doesn't use conditioner, I can tell clearly.
Come on.
I'm like, you're so jealous.
You would kill for her hair.
Literally,
don't
I don't even know what these people are talking about. I'm like, ugh.
Like, I look at her hair and I'm like, why does mine not look like that?
And then I was like looking at, I don't know what I saw, but I was like, oh, I want to look up at when she had that dark hair again.
Oh, yeah.
For Green Lantern. And even that looked good.
I know.
I'm like, you people are nuts.
No, nothing is going to make me hate her.
I know.
There's
not
just nothing.
To that extent.
Yeah. No, I'm fully on the bandwagon. I have been for a long time. Just stop. Like, I don't want to hear it. I want to just to like pivot off of that for a second. Remember when we Joe Jonas and what's her name, Sophie Turner were going through their separation and stuff, and we had all that like negative press that was coming out, and then people were saying that like Joe Jonas's own camp was putting it out, and then I was listening to stuff about like J-Lo and how her publicist and stuff has allegedly been putting stuff out there about like, oh well, you know, she's been keeping in contact with her stepkids, but he hasn't. And it just made me think like, you know, we heard that Justin Baldoni hired that Crisis PR. And I'm just like, are we all like pawns in this game? Like, are we all being played? Like, I genuinely just, the way, I'm sure that this always happened, but it just seems like I've never seen it to this extent before.
Right, where we're like, because you can get people to jump on the bandwagon.
Right.
It's like before it used to be like, oh, well, she, you know, or it'd be like he left her for another woman, but it's that other woman who's the evil devil. Now it's like, well, actually, you're the problem. No, you're the problem. It's like you can just get people to gang up on you.
I know.
You're like, no, it's not the other woman's fault. It's the wife's fault now.
And especially when, you know, now it makes me question everything. Like, what camp are these stories coming from?
Right.
Because everything, I mean, it literally, not, again, I know we're like apologists for Blake Lively, but I don't even care. She needs allies out here. But like every freaking day there was something new.
I know. I'm like,
I can't,
where is this coming from?
I just can't believe that is organic.
Right. But then it's also like weird too, because why would Justin sabotage his own movie? So it's like this whole,
and why would Blake put those things out about herself?
Right. It's so weird. And then I saw somebody make a theory that Blake and Ryan are going to be getting a divorce soon, and that he's having these stuff pointed out, and you're like, I can't even like that's so beyond calculated. And if they end up being right, I'm gonna be like,
I'm gonna be mind blown.
Literally.
Like, yeah, I don't know. Well, Blake right now is hunkered down with Taylor Swift and Gigi and Bradley Cooper
and the Mahomes.
Yep. So she's
and the Kelseys.
Yes. She's just trying to live her life.
Well, even then, and then it was like, again with those zoomed in pictures. It was so zoomed in,
like long lens pictures.
I feel
her and Ryan kissing. I'm like, this feels like the way they were kissing felt too like intimate. I'm like, I should not be seeing this.
And then I heard like the people were outside of that house or whatever and like messing with the security.
Well, we've got drone shots.
I know. It's like, people, let them play with their kids.
I know. And like she's trying to escape. Let her escape.
She's with like her support
and Taylor's
system.
Just come off this huge tour.
I know.
Like,
it's like
give them a minute.
Know, like let them have. It's about to be the game season again. It's like,
I know. Give them a break.
I know. Like leave them alone. They're like, oh, they're kissing. That's probably fake.
It is a little disappointing that we weren't invited.
Right.
But actually, you know what? we won't tell you if we're going.
Maybe we're there now.
Yeah, maybe we're there. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. Let us know your thoughts on the book. Next week, we will reveal what our next book will be. So stay tuned for that. And make sure you tell your friends about us. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.